Good morning. How are you? It's the weekend, Saturday, December 21st, 7:29, and it's the shortest daylight day of the year for the Northern Hemisphere. And we're going to jump right into our weather spotlight. Spotlight. Look at this, January 4th through 17th. Just looking far ahead into the future and our crystal ball provided by the National Weather Service. And our fortunes are going to be changing. With much of the country turning below average on temperatures. Now, the Southwest are being left out. Above average here in Alaska, above average here too, but that cold air heading south for the first couple weeks of January, and precipitation-wise kind of drying out, except for Montana, Wyoming, the Dakotas into western Nebraska, and eastern Colorado into Kansas. That's our best chance of above average precipitation for the first couple and a half weeks of January. That could be quite a bit of snow. We'll see. And just because you're below average doesn't mean you won't get any rain or snow. Just below average chances. So a sneak peek at January for you. Now back to current temperatures. It's cold outside. We're at 14, I think, right now here in western Iowa. Now, yesterday morning we were at 9, so it's warming up. Single digits, though, still up there, Minnesota, Wisconsin. It's cold all across the plains into the northeast. It's going to turn colder in the southeast. We'll show you that. And the west coast, 40s, all the way down to Phoenix. 24-hour temperature change. Excuse me. Warmer in the northern plains, especially. Colder as you get into Wisconsin, eastern Minnesota, and, colder basically east. And pretty average, or pretty much what it was yesterday for the west. All right. Hazards this morning, not a lot on here, but significant freeze watch in effect for parts of Florida into Georgia as that cold air heads to the southeast. Winter weather advisories hanging on for the Appalachians, a little bit of Ohio into New York State and Maine, also up there in northeastern Montana. Some wind issues for you, California, Oregon, getting into Nevada, and also in Washington State, and even more significant for southeastern Wyoming with a high wind watch there. 48-hour precipitation. It's the West Coast, man. It's going to be storm after storm after storm, and this one dumping a lot of mostly rain. A little bit of rain there in Florida as well. Where would this fall as snow? Well, a little bit in North Dakota across Minnesota into Wisconsin, a little bit more into Michigan, and even more into Ohio, where we have that winter weather watch, winter weather advisory, and same for New York State. And then way up high in the Cascades of Oregon, a little bit lower snow levels in Washington and scattered snows across the mountains of Idaho. Montana, Wyoming, even Northern California. Today's surface shows that storm moving into the Pacific Northwest, maybe even some freezing rain, Washington into Montana. Rain along the coast, of course. There's your snow for the Great Lakes and the Northeast. And that cold front moving all the way through Florida. Anomalous temperatures today, above average west, below average east. Here in the middle where I am in western Iowa. A high near freezing, which is average for this time of year. It's supposed to be cold. It's winter. All right, surface for tomorrow. Yeah, storm for the Pacific Northwest. Rain along the coast. Rain or snow depending on elevation and location. Inland, little spot there in Oregon with some heavy snow possible. Maybe freezing rain. Montana, North Dakota, Minnesota, clipping South Dakota. With snow up there in the Great Lakes, including the eastern Great Lakes. Anomalous temperatures tomorrow, warming up in the plains, a little above average here, or even more than that, even more than a little. Below average for the southeast, and much below average up there in the northeast. And we'll show you those southeast temperatures. It's cold tomorrow morning. Surface on Monday, another Pacific Northwest storm. Then we see some showers and storms busting out. Nothing severe expected here. Texas, Oklahoma, Arkansas, peeking into Kansas. Rain into the Ohio Valley from there. Some rain in the southeast too, Georgia, South Carolina, and Florida. A little bit of North Carolina. And then we have a mix up there in the Great Lakes or snow, depending on where you are. Anomalous temperatures on Monday, warming even more for most of the country. Hanging on to below average temperatures, Georgia, South Carolina, North Carolina, Virginia, up the East Coast. All right, let's take a look at the GFS and see what we're going to get for Christmas and before and after. Here's your Pacific Northwest storm this morning at 6 a.m. Rain, a little bit of snow in the mountains, and not much else going on. You see the blue dotted line. That's kind of demarks our colder air. And even the red lines, it's still cool here in the southeast, even though the blue line's not all the way down there. As we get through the day today, some rain moving across Washington into Idaho. Some of that is snow in the higher elevations. A little bit more snow as you get further inland into northwest Montana, the Idaho Panhandle, and a little bit further south. And it's kind of quiet, but as we get into Sunday morning now, we see a little bit of rain and some high elevation snows in Northern California, busting out that cold air, moving into the southeast. But these red lines are now moving into the plains, into the Midwest, and these lines are kind of close together. So it's going to be a little bit of a south wind pushing that warmer air back into the Midwest. I mean, 40s is not warm, but it's certainly warm for this time of year. And then as we get further into the day on Sunday, another storm for the Pacific Northwest with rain, snow inland at the higher elevations. As we get into the 23rd, we're getting closer to Christmas. A little bit of snow to add to your white Christmas chances for northern Michigan back into Wisconsin. This is 6 a.m. on the 23rd. Rain in the lower elevations, snow in the higher elevations of Idaho into Montana. Snow up there in the Cascades of Washington. Monday, here's noon Central Time. Snow for Michigan. Back into Wisconsin, I'm dreaming of a white Christmas. And that snow spreads into the northeast. We start to see some rain busting out here in the southern plains into Missouri, maybe getting close to the coast here of the Carolinas. Another storm system for the Pacific Northwest, and wow, heavy rain, Northern California into southern Oregon. Some high mountain snows here. This is early Christmas Eve day, 3 a.m. Eastern or Central Time. This gets us to 6 a.m. Central. Here's 9 and here's noon. So we see those showers and storms that we talked about on the surface map, from Texas into Arkansas up into Missouri, even getting into Illinois a little bit. Snow for the higher elevations of the Northwest, rain and heavy rain, even down into California. Even looks like even the highest elevations here in the Sierras. So that could be fun because they've got quite a snowpack. And it will turn to snow, turn back to snow on the backside as we get into Christmas Eve night. We see some snow here in the Idaho Panhandle, eastern Washington, eastern Oregon, the higher elevations of the mountains in California. Heavy rain, Arkansas down to near Shreveport, Louisiana, East Texas, almost down to Houston. And as we get into Christmas Eve, Santa time, this is midnight Central Time. We do see some scattered snows across Idaho into Nevada. I'm going to back up one frame just for you, Boise. I mean, it kind of looks like there's some snow in there, doesn't it? Could Boise get a miracle snow Christmas Eve? Technical white Christmas is an inch or more on the ground for Christmas. I don't know if it'll be enough, but there's a chance. All right, anyway, we've got some heavy rain down here, Louisiana, midnight, Santa time. So Rudolph's going to have to deal with that. And then some rain all the way up into Chicago, light rain. And as we get into Christmas Day, we've got snow for Utah, waking up to snow coming down and snow on the ground. So that could be a white Christmas at the very last second. And that moves into Colorado as we go through Christmas Day. This is the afternoon. Rain from Chicago all the way down to Alabama, even the panhandle of Florida. Florida with some rain. Snow, Utah, Colorado, northern New Mexico. Another system moving into the Pacific Northwest with rain and high elevation snows. Snow level looks lower on this one. You see that snow overspreading eastern Oregon as we get into the day after Christmas. and some snow for the Siskiyous. Watch out, travelers, if you're heading back home after hanging out with the family. That snow moves into Idaho, and yes, this is Boise snow. Also eastern Washington down into Nevada. Lots of snow for everybody here the day after Christmas. It's just bad timing. We get a low out here in the plains, and this is interesting. Whenever, it's kind of like a spring setup. If you have cold air barreling into warm air, you could see severe weather. I don't know if that's going to happen here into Oklahoma, Kansas, Missouri, Arkansas, but something worth watching. Of course, we'll keep you posted. Snow and it's lighter snow as it moves into Wyoming, and then another system for the Pacific Northwest, heavy rain on the coast, snow inland, and this low brings rain to Iowa. Midnight the 26th into the 27th. Crazy. And there's that line of storms going from Illinois, Indiana, through western Tennessee into Arkansas. So we'll keep an eye on that to see if that becomes a winter severe weather setup. We have snow moving back into Idaho, maybe even down to Boise. Might be rain. It's going to be real close. You know how it is in Boise. This is a feature, right? The snow stays in the mountains. That's what my dad used to say growing up in Oregon. That snow can stay in the mountains where it belongs. Once in a while, we'd get snow where I lived. Anyway, rain for the Great Lakes. Crazy. On the 27th at noon, rain into Texas. All right, let's speed up. This could be a severe weather setup on the 28th, but that's kind of far out, but we'll keep an eye on it. And then another Pacific Northwest storm on the 28th. Another rainstorm for Iowa into Wisconsin, Minnesota on the 29th. Then we see, looks like a little bit cooler air in the west, but another Pacific Northwest storm with heavy rain in Oregon, Northern California. Heavy rain and snow for Idaho into Montana. Wyoming getting in on the act. Finally some snow for you. And we'll see where this goes because, remember, we were showing possibility of some snow in the plains to end the month. And here we go. This is New Year's Eve, and Kansas getting in on the snow now, according to the model. And we're getting skunked in Iowa, where we had our first real snowstorm. But you can see this cold air moving back in as we get into January, like we talked about at the top of the show. Our fortunes changing as we get into January with some colder air coming for at least the first couple weeks. And there you see some snow on the 6th, pretty far south. So we'll see if that comes true. There's the end of the run. That's getting kind of far out there. All right, back to today. We'll go through the next 7 days for high temperatures. Then we see the cold hanging on. Northern plains, upper Midwest, through the Great Lakes and the Northeast. Warmth for the desert Southwest, and otherwise about where it should be. Kind of chilly in the Southeast, but look at tomorrow morning in the Southeast. It is freezing temperatures, all of Mississippi, all of Alabama, all of Georgia, all of South Carolina, all the way down into the Florida Panhandle, northern Florida, and through Louisiana, just freezing tomorrow morning. And pretty cold, of course, colder as you head north. So, yeah, 40s even to start the day in Phoenix. Highs tomorrow, you try to recover. You're in the 50s for the Southeast, even some 40s. But a little warmer down there in Florida. And the warmth is starting to come back into the plains. Again, warmth for this kind of time of year. But 60s West Texas all the way up into Kansas. For Monday, we see a little bit cooler coming down into the southern plains, but warming up a little bit here in the Midwest. Hanging on to the cold for the northern plains, upper Midwest, and into the Northeast. Hanging on to the warmth for the desert Southwest. That goes for Tuesday too, as we're still in the 40s here in Iowa, but hanging on to freezing temperatures and your white Christmas for the upper Midwest, northern plains, and the Northeast. Here is your Christmas temperatures. And it warms up a little bit more, northern plains, Great Lakes into the Northeast, and you're finally back in the 60s, most of the Southeast. Hanging on to the 50s, though, northern Georgia into the Carolinas, 40s, Virginias, and, for Tennessee, you're in the 50s. Kentucky, too. Thursday, even warmer Southeast as you start to moderate those temperatures. But still kind of warm for this time of year for the rest of us. Is it Festivus season yet for the rest of us? Anyway, Friday's highs even warmer as we go. Now, the 8 to 14 day temperatures hasn't changed. I mean, it's still above average for the whole country, pretty much. Alaska and Hawaii, too. And precipitation wise, a lot of rain and snow for this time of year, which is probably good. Southwest being left out. But again, our weather spotlight, our fortunes are changing in January 4th through the 17th. Much of the country below average on temperatures as we're going to flip the script, although staying warm in the Southwest and, drying out too, unfortunately. All right, let's do the White Christmas for you. Projections haven't changed a whole lot from yesterday. We're still looking at, this is the European ensemble, White Christmas, Northern Plains, Upper Midwest, Great Lakes, into the Northeast and the mountains of the West, and your smiley face in Idaho. Canadian, less of a smiley face in Idaho. There's a little bit of snow on the ground for you. That could be that Christmas Eve snow. So we'll see. It might surprise you. And, well, it may not surprise you now since I gave you a heads up, but yeah, maybe some snow on the ground for Boise Christmas morning. Certainly snowing in Utah into Colorado, and similar areas on the Canadian for the White Christmas, Northern Plains, Upper Midwest through the Great Lakes and Northeast. And the GFS a little backing off a little bit. But still, Minnesota White Christmas, Wisconsin White Christmas, Northern Michigan, Northern Pennsylvania into New York State and much of the Northeast, and your smiley face is back in Idaho. So those are your projected White Christmases, and we'll see exactly how it pans out. But you can see there's some areas that pretty much are a lock at this point, and we'll keep you posted as we get closer. Merry Christmas to you. Enjoy your Saturday, and we'll see you tomorrow right here on the Weather Mic.